Three ordinary Lincoln pennies. A shocking $1.6 million auction story. The 1960, 1965, and 1967 cents look like pocket change. But hidden details pushed one of them to $725,000. So what did collectors see that everyone else missed? Most people would never give a second look to a 1960 Lincoln penny. It sits quietly in old jars, forgotten drawers, and pocket change collections across America. At first glance, it looks exactly like thousands of other pennies produced during the same era. But hidden within this ordinary-looking 1-cent coin is a story that has fascinated collectors for decades and in extraordinary condition. One example has been associated with values reaching an astonishing $725,000. This coin is the first chapter in a much larger mystery, because the deeper collectors look, the more they discover that appearances can be incredibly misleading. The year 1960 was a fascinating time in American history. Families were watching a new decade unfold. Automobiles filled the highways, and millions of Lincoln pennies passed from hand to hand every single day. Nobody stopping at a grocery store or dropping a penny into a vending machine could have imagined that some of those coins would one day become the center of intense collector attention. That is what makes this coin so interesting. At first glance, a 1960 Lincoln penny with no mint mark appears completely ordinary. Abraham Lincoln's familiar portrait is displayed on the front, while the wheat ears that appeared on earlier cents had already been replaced by the Lincoln Memorial. Design on the reverse. To the average person, it is simply another old penny, but experienced collectors do not see it that way. When a knowledgeable collector picks up a 1960 penny, their eyes immediately begin searching for details most people never notice. They look at the surfaces. They examine the color. They study the strike. They check tiny design, elements that can separate a common coin from a truly remarkable example. And that is where the story starts becoming much more interesting. One of the first things experts notice is the absence of a mint mark. A no-mint mark Lincoln cent from 1960 was struck in Philadelphia. While millions were produced, collectors know that survival is not the same as rarity. Most examples entered circulation immediately and spent years being handled, scratched, dropped, and worn. Finding one today is easy. Finding one that looks almost exactly as it did when it left the mint is a completely different challenge. This is where many viewers are surprised. Two 1960 Philadelphia pennies can look nearly identical to an untrained eye. Both may have the same date. Both may have the same design. Both may even have similar color. Yet one could be worth only a small amount, while another becomes a prize that serious collectors compete to own. Why? Because condition changes everything. A collector-grade example must preserve details that ordinary circulation quickly destroys. The highest points of Lincoln's portrait, the sharpness of the lettering, the brilliance of the original surfaces, and even the strength of the strike all become incredibly important. Then there is color. Copper coins develop different appearances over time. Some darken, some tone unevenly. Others lose their original mint luster. But when a coin retains exceptional original color and eye appeal, collectors take notice immediately. In fact, some advanced collectors can identify a potentially valuable example within seconds simply by observing how light reflects across the coin's surface. That tiny clue often tells a much bigger story. As the years passed, interest in high-grade Lincoln cents continued growing. Collectors began searching through rolls, collections, and estate holdings, hoping to uncover exceptional examples that had somehow escaped decades of wear. Occasionally one appears, and when it does, experts examine it carefully. Was it preserved from the beginning? Did it avoid circulation? Does it possess the strong strike and original surfaces collectors seek? Those questions can dramatically affect desirability. Adding even more intrigue are the varieties and mint-made imperfections that collectors constantly search for. During the production process, dyes could wear, shift, or develop unusual characteristics. Certain varieties attract tremendous attention because they reveal small but fascinating differences from standard examples. Many collectors spend years studying these details. Some never stop searching. The excitement comes from knowing that a tiny feature invisible to most people can completely transform a coin's significance. That possibility is what keeps people looking. Through old collections and forgotten penny jars, By now, it should be clear that this coin is much more than a simple 1-cent piece. It represents a surviving artifact from a different era of American life. It traveled through a nation entering the 1960s, passed through countless hands, and somehow survived long enough for modern collectors to study and appreciate it. But the story becomes even more dramatic when elite-grade examples reach the marketplace. When a truly exceptional specimen appears at auction, competition can become intense. Collectors understand how difficult it is to locate coins that combine rarity, preservation, eye appeal, and historical significance at the highest levels. That demand can push values far beyond what most people expect from a penny. And in extraordinary circumstances, examples associated with this remarkable 1960 no mint-mark Lincoln cent have achieved values around $725,000. For a coin originally worth only 1 cent, that number feels almost impossible. Yet it perfectly illustrates why collectors pay attention to details most people overlook. The smallest difference can change everything. And while this coin already seems incredible, an even bigger mystery is waiting ahead. The next coin introduces a clue that confuses many. Collectors, the first time they see it, some dismiss it completely. Others recognize it instantly as something special. The question is this: why would two coins that appear almost identical make experienced collectors react in completely different ways? The answer hides in a detail so small that most people never notice it at all. And that mystery begins with coin number 2. Some coins become valuable because they are rare. Others become valuable because they tell a story that collectors cannot stop investigating. The 1965 Lincoln penny belongs to a fascinating category somewhere in between. At first glance, there is nothing dramatic about it. No flashy design change, no unusual shape, no obvious clue that makes it stand out from countless other Lincoln cents. In fact, that is exactly why this coin continues to attract attention. The mystery begins with something most people overlook completely. Collectors usually focus on the date first, but specialists often look elsewhere. They look at the surfaces. They look at the strike. And most importantly, they look for signs that the coin somehow escaped, the fate that affected millions of others from the same year. To understand why, we have to return to 1965. America was changing rapidly. New technologies were appearing. The country was experiencing major social changes, and the U.S. Mint was dealing with a growing coin shortage. Demand for circulating coins was rising, and production pressure increased dramatically. Millions of pennies were struck to keep commerce moving. Most entered circulation immediately. Most were spent, handled, scratched, and worn down through decades of everyday use. Yet a tiny number followed a very different path. That is where the investigation begins. A common 1965 Lincoln cent can be found without much difficulty. Many survive today, but when experienced collectors examine examples from this year, they are searching for something far more elusive. They are searching for preservation. Most people stop their examination here because every 1965 penny seems similar, but the real difference appears when attention shifts to the smallest details. Look closely at Lincoln's portrait. Are the highest points still sharp? Does the coin retain its original mint luster? Do the fields still reflect light the way they did when the coin was newly struck? These questions may sound minor, but collectors know they can completely change the coin's importance. Two pennies can sit side by side. Same date, same design, same denomination. Yet one might attract little attention, while the other becomes the target of serious collector competition. Why? Because exceptional preservation becomes increasingly difficult with every passing decade. As the years move forward, pristine examples become harder to locate. Each mark, scratch, fingerprint, or period of circulation slowly removes pieces of what collectors are seeking. That creates an interesting psychological effect within the hobby. The fewer untouched examples that remain, the more attention they receive. And attention creates demand. Demand creates competition. Competition creates extraordinary prices. But before discussing value, another detail deserves attention. Authentication. Experienced researchers know that condition alone is not enough. Authenticity, originality, and eye appeal all matter. A coin may look impressive at first glance, but specialists examine it carefully for signs of cleaning, alteration, environmental damage, or artificial enhancement. Many coins fail that test. The most desirable examples pass it. Collectors also study strike quality. Some 1965 cents display stronger details than others. Sharp lettering, crisp design elements, and well-defined features often separate ordinary examples from premium pieces. Again, the differences can be surprisingly small, and yet those small differences are exactly what advanced collectors pursue. By now, the picture is becoming clearer. This is not simply a penny. It is a surviving artifact from a unique period in American history, preserved well enough to demonstrate what millions of other examples, once looked like before circulation, changed them forever. That combination of history, preservation, and collector demand explains why elite examples generate so much excitement when they appear on the market. When a truly exceptional specimen reaches top-tier collector status, bidding can become intense. The reason is not merely rarity. It is the challenge of finding another one with the same combination of originality, eye appeal, strike quality, and preservation. That is why certain examples of the 1965 no-mint mark, Lincoln penny, have achieved values reaching approximately $525,000. For a coin originally worth 1 cent, that number still surprises even experienced collectors. Yet despite everything this coin reveals, another example in this collection challenged assumptions in a completely different way. Collectors who consider this the most fascinating coin of the group often change their minds after seeing what comes next. A detail hidden on the next penny raises a question that experts still examine carefully whenever one appears. And once you notice it, it becomes impossible to ignore. There is a strange moment that happens at major coin shows and collector gatherings. A person places an old penny on a table, and most people walk right past it without a second glance. Then a specialist stops, leans closer, and suddenly the conversation changes. The coin has not changed. The date has not changed. The design has not changed. Only one thing has changed. Someone noticed a detail. That idea brings us to the final coin in this documentary, the 1967 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that perfectly demonstrates how hidden details can transform an ordinary object into something extraordinary. On the surface, this appears straightforward. It is a Lincoln cent produced in 1967. Abraham Lincoln's portrait appears on the front, while the Lincoln Memorial stands on the reverse. Millions of Americans handled these coins during everyday transactions, often without giving them a second thought. Yet the closer collectors look, the more complicated the story becomes. The year 1967 was an interesting period for American coinage. The United States Mint was still responding to production pressures and increasing demand for circulating coins. Pennies were produced in enormous numbers because they were needed everywhere. That fact alone causes many people to assume a 1967 penny could never be special. Collectors know better. Large production. Numbers do not automatically create large numbers of surviving elite examples. That distinction changes everything. Most examples experience the same journey. They traveled through cash registers, pockets, vending machines, piggy banks, and jars. Each year added wear, every exchange left another mark. Tiny scratches accumulated. Original surfaces faded. Mint luster slowly disappeared. The process was ordinary. The result was predictable. What remains today are countless circulated examples that tell the story of everyday use, but exceptional examples tell another story. Somehow, a very small number escaped decades of damage. Perhaps they were saved immediately. Perhaps they remained untouched in a collection. Perhaps they were preserved by someone who never realized how important that decision would become. Whatever the reason, these survivors became increasingly attractive to collectors. Most people examine the date first. Experienced specialists often do not. Instead, they study the coin's overall appearance. They examine the sharpness of Lincoln's hair. They inspect the lettering. They evaluate the strength of the strike. They watch how light moves across the surfaces. Those observations reveal clues. A common example may appear dull and heavily worn. An elite example can look dramatically different, preserving details that many 1967 cents lost long ago. And that is where another layer of the mystery emerges. Authentication. Not every attractive coin is necessarily desirable to advanced collectors. Experts carefully examine surfaces for evidence of cleaning, artificial enhancement, environmental damage, or alterations that occurred after the coin left the mint. A coin that remains original is often far more desirable than one that has been modified. That originality becomes part of its story. Then comes grading. To casual observers, two coins may seem nearly identical. To professional graders, the differences can be significant. A tiny mark in the wrong location, a slightly weaker strike, a small disruption in surface quality. Each factor influences how a coin is evaluated. And when a coin reaches the highest levels of preservation, collector interest can increase dramatically. This is where market demand enters the picture. Elite Lincoln cents attract attention because they are difficult to replace. Collectors. Building advanced collections often compete for the finest available examples. The challenge is not finding a 1967 penny. The challenge is finding one that meets the demanding standard serious collectors pursue. That competition creates excitement whenever exceptional pieces appear for sale. And after years of preservation, certification, examination, and collector demand, some remarkable examples of the 1967 mint mark Lincoln penny have reached values around $350,000. For a 1-cent coin, the number seems almost unbelievable. Yet by now, the reason should feel much clearer. This documentary began with a 1960 penny, continued through a fascinating 1965 example, and concludes with this remarkable 1967 cent. Each coin appeared ordinary at first glance. Each looked similar to countless others. Yet hidden beneath the surface were details that collectors learn to recognize, protect, and appreciate. That may be the most important lesson these coins teach. True value is rarely announced loudly. More often, it hides in small details, patient observation, and knowledge that most people overlook. The next time an old penny crosses your path, remember this documentary, because history, rarity, and extraordinary value do not always stand out. Sometimes they wait quietly for someone curious enough to look a little closer.